Dark was an extraordinary play to do. It came quite later in my writing career for radio writing career, but the process of it is really same as everything really. The idea, the synopsis, and so on. Now, it was not as easy as I thought it was going to be to get Dark off the ground, because it was the first time I had done something that was outside my usual remit, which was about family life, family plays, saga plays, even though they'd been very popular. But I'd always wanted to write something that was difficult and something that explored me, that's something I could discover in myself. So I went to John Tiedemann, and I also went to another wonderful man there called Richard Emerson, very celebrated man who was the head of the script unit there, who sadly died very young. But I went to both of them and I said, I want to do this. And they said, they were a bit doubtful about it. I said, it's a Monday play type thing. Now, the Monday night play was intellectually more important. It was an intellectual spot, as opposed to Saturday night theatre, which was a popular spot. And the Monday night theatres had always been beyond my thoughts, really. I'd never thought about writing it. But they said, well, what do you have in mind? So I talked it through with them. And I told them the sort of thing I wanted to do. And they said, right, the idea, then I did a synopsis. I did a 30-page synopsis for it. And then they liked that. We talked about things, changing things. And then I wrote the script. And it was a 90-minute script. And I had written one or two 90-minute scripts before for Saturday night theatre. But this was extraordinary because in many ways it's a sort of thing, it's a supernatural thriller that really does affect one. And if you're sitting writing it at night, it affects you even more. But you asked me at one time, I believe, about whether there was anything of me in my work. Well, there is in this. I can't tell you precisely what it is, but there's a bit of me in Virginia, there's a bit of me in Simon, the boy. So I thought, how can I express this? Now, putting it together, it came out extremely well, and I played around with several drafts of it. So the difference between then and now, obviously, is that the effects, the sound effects, were done in the studio as the play took place. I mean, if you went into any BBC studio, you would see a little door. And that door could be used for the sound effects girl. There was an SFX girl there, old fella. And you'd have stairs. They had stairs that could be steel stairs, metal tipped, or stone stairs, or carpeted stairs, and so on. So you had all the effects in the studio. A few things were put on tape, obviously, and they fed those in. But that's how it was. I mean, today, obviously, everything is put on after the play has been recorded with the actors. But I was always in the studio, in the control room, listening and watching. And it was extraordinary to see how people get into their roles. I have great admiration. I always have had great admiration for not only actors, and I do have admiration for them, but also for those people who toil away in behind cameras, behind microphones, and doing sound effects and everything, stage management. It's a very intricate. But any work is a team effort. We must never forget that. It starts with the writer. Whatever it is, it starts with the writer. But then everybody's a team. As I have said before, Dark is an extraordinary play for me to have written, and many people have said so, because it was unlike anything I'd ever done. I've always been quite nervous of the supernatural. I've never liked the idea of seances. I've never been to one and would never go to one. I've always been very scared of that and of the dead. And yet, I've always loved spooky plays. Now, but I knew that I couldn't just have a straightforward spooky play. It had to have some sort of depth. Now, I was talking to a psychiatrist once, a friend of mine, and he was telling me about where dark comes from. What I based it on is that there's one little area of the mind which psychologists, psychiatrists know as the dark area of the mind. Now, it's that in that area that we have lost our connections with the past. I mean, in the early ages, in Stone Age and so on, they had it. They knew when something was probably 5 miles away. Dogs have it today. They'll start whining or barking when they hear something that is high-pitched, but we can't hear it. So there is that dark area, and it intrigued me. And I thought, how can I use that little dark area? And I was able to write what I hope was far deeper than it seems on sight. And John Tideman felt the same, and so did Richard Imerson at the script unit. And they had brought in 3 consummate artists to play in it. Honor Blackman. It was originally written for a wonderful woman. Well, not written for her, but she wanted to play in it. Lee Remick, and she was in England at the time. Unfortunately, Lee died, which was very sad, and Honor Blackman took her place and did it very well, and I'm now delighted that it's been recast again with Tracy Childs. And but at the time it was very good casting, and I was terribly pleased to get Bessie Love into the cast as the mother, because Bessie was one of the great stars of Hollywood in her time. She was one of Busby Berkeley dancers and singers, and she was in 42nd Street and all those great famous things. And Nigel Anthony, who was a regular member of the BBC Drama Repertory Company, playing Simon, and he was even not the same age as Simon, but he was older. And they were a very good cast, a very small cast, but very good. Now, the sound effects were all done in the studio, obviously, and they were quite spooky. But something very odd happened during the rehearsals of Dark, because in those days we had about 3 days of rehearsals for a 90-minute play, and then on the 3rd or 4th day one would do the actual recording. But on the first day of rehearsals...
It was okay.
No, okay.
What about the noise? It wasn't that bad. No.
Okay. Sorry.
So it's all right.
Do you want to pick up from rehearsals?
Rehearsals, yeah.
On the first day of
Oh, yeah.
rehearsals, yeah.
But an extraordinary thing happened on the first day of rehearsals. And that is, I used to have a little flat in a kind of pied-à-terre in the West End in London, which was quite easy to get to the BBC. And David Spencer and myself were going out to dinner one night, and he said, I'm just going off to buy a bottle of drink in the off-licence. So he got out, and we had a dormobile at the time. And I got out, and I read a newspaper while I waited for him. And as I waited there, and I was on the roadside, not on the pavement side, but on the roadside, I was reading it, a Jaguar car came rushing to a halt, skidded to a halt, and a man got out. He was a very tall man, and a great thuggish-looking guy. And I looked up and smiled at him, thinking he was going to ask the way, some directions or something. But not at all. He just landed the most awful blow on me with his fist. And he had a knuckle duster on. And he burst my face open, so the blood spotted all over the place. And I fell to my knees, and I was dazed. And so I didn't know what to do, but I heard David rushing, I'll kill you, so I'll kill you. But this guy just got back into the car, and he had a kind of a rather floozy blonde in a leopard skin coat in the car, put his foot down on the accelerator and rushed off. What was all that about, I thought. I never saw the man, I never knew the man, and we never discovered who or what he was. But he went off, and I had to go to hospital, left stitches and everything else. It was awful. The following day I went into rehearsals, and everyone was horrified to see me, my face with all these stitches and cuts. And Bessie Love was there. She was just a tiny little woman, but she was so vibrant and so extraordinary in many ways. And she said to me, I told her what had happened, and she said, I want to talk to you when we go for a coffee upstairs during the break. So we did, and we sat together. And she said, Dear Victor, I knew this was going to happen in one way or another, because yesterday I saw around you a ring of light around your head. And I knew that to me signified that something could happen. Now it turned out that Bessie was I think she was a medium or a Christian Scientist or something like this. But she was very religious. And she had foreseen this, so she told me. And she said, but I did not want to tell you because I didn't want you to be frightened or unnerved by it. And she was very, very upset by it. And it was quite difficult getting through that day. But when we heard that, when she said to me, where did this take place? And I said, well, it took place just around the corner from where I live, and it's a street called George Street. And we all suddenly realised the significance of that. The name of the dead man in dark is George.